wonderful opportunity of talking to two women by the name of Elisa and Janita. Elisa is a 57-year-old woman. She's white. She's pretty average height, pretty average weight. She's an athletic woman and is very avid about working out. On the other hand, Janita's a 32-year-old woman. She is a PACU nurse. She's African American. She's overweight, and she has a 1-year-old son. Overall, looking at these two women, you'd think that they'd have very different lives. They're very different people. So when I first talked to these two people, I definitely assumed that they'd have some sort of different experience with pregnancy. Elisa was pregnant back in the mid-90s. Janita was pregnant a year ago. But after interviewing them, I actually came to find that their experiences are extremely similar. And although they do have their differences here or there, the core foundation and center of their pregnancies and their labor and their birth was love. So as I mentioned in my paper, Elisa decided, because she was a single 32-year-old and approaching the age where she was going to be an at-risk pregnancy, she wanted to have a kid at the age that she was at before there were more of those dangers later in life. And she decided to experience with artificial insemination. She knew that she wanted to have a child, and she went out of her way, paid out of her pocket to do that. On the other hand, Janita also wanted to have a child, but she was married and she was on birth control. They were consistently having sex, and they thought, okay, we want a kid. Why don't we come off birth control and see what happens? They got lucky, as did Elisa. They both got pregnant on their first try, which is very unlikely, but neither of them faced any sort of issue with fertility, which 10 to 15% of individuals do face. Another difference that I did find between these two individuals was their weight. Elisa was extremely conscious about working out. Janita did not exercise as much, so she was overweight. So at the beginning, their bodies looked different. And when Elisa talked about her concerns as she was getting pregnant, she was concerned that her belly was getting bigger and her feet were getting swollen and her breasts were getting bigger, and she didn't look like or feel like herself. She didn't feel as healthy as she once did. On the other hand, when talking about pregnancy, Janita was more mentioning how she was tired all the time. She was talking about how her feet hurt when she was on the job, and she was talking about how she was moody. So I saw these two variations where one was very physical and one was very emotional. Both women were lucky enough not to have to deal with many complications during pregnancy. Elisa did describe having to urinate more often, which is most likely due to the fact that the baby is against the bladder. And Janita also mentioned this too, having to get up and go to the bathroom all the time. She was also overweight, so had to go to a special place to get her ultrasound because the regular ultrasound wasn't strong enough. When asked about the best part of pregnancy, that's where I saw a huge similarity between the two, because they both mentioned that their favorite part was just knowing that somebody was inside of them that was part of them. And when I asked them about what it felt like to first feel that kick, at first they thought it was gas, both of them. But then when they could start seeing it, both of them just thought that it was one of the most incredible feelings ever. It was that first moment where they really knew that this is real and that there was something inside of them that was going to be theirs one day. Janita described her labor and delivery process as absolutely miserable. She wanted to have a natural birth, and that couldn't happen because they thought that her baby was going to be too big. So they induced her. Even after the epidural, she said she was in a whole lot of pain. Elisa was in labor for 4 hours, and her daughter was out in the first push. So it's interesting how these two individuals have completely different experiences with labor. Elisa said that her pain was masked by the excitement because she felt it getting close. She saw that light at the end of the tunnel, whereas Janita saw it as this long process that she was never going to get to the end of. Finally, when it comes to postpartum, both individuals said that they didn't necessarily have postpartum depression. They did have a lot of adjustments that they had to make after pregnancy. Both had to deal with the babies crying in the middle of the night. They had to deal with the fatigue and the scheduling and the new routine. Janita was breastfeeding while Elisa was not, just because that's what they thought was best for the baby. But Janita says that her experience was waking up all these hours to her baby crying and wanting to eat. Elisa said her daughter slept through the night pretty quickly. Elisa said that she was more stressed about when she could get back to her normal routine and exercise regularly and feel fit again. Janita, when asked about this question, she focused more on what other people were saying to her. Other people were telling her what her baby should be doing at this point, what she should be doing at this point, that her baby shouldn't be crying at this time, that she should stop breastfeeding. She said she was overwhelmed and she felt as if she was failing as a mother and she was failing her job, taking care of her son. And she had to just get all of that out of her head and say, I'm not failing. I'm a new mother. I need to experience this myself.